You know, today's the first day I actually thought Donald Trump might not finish his term in office.
Really?
I mean, I think this thing is enormous. And the whole week, you think about what the position is of Donald Trump and the Trump camp about all these things. You know, his position is, for 6 months, Michael Cohen never discussed with him that that he was negotiating for a Moscow Trump Tower. It's preposterous. I mean, it's just preposterous. Second, he says that Roger Stone never discussed with him that he was negotiating with WikiLeaks and talking about WikiLeaks, even though both Donald Trump and Roger Stone were obsessed with WikiLeaks. But they spoke repeatedly and never discussed it. Third, Don Jr. never discussed with his father the plans for the Trump Tower meeting in June of 2016.
And never discussed what he learned in the email, which was that Russia is supporting his father's election.
Which all of these are complementary to each other. And all of the stories that Trump is telling about them are preposterous. And you know, when you combine them all, the question becomes, when do Republicans start to turn on Trump? Because that's the only thing that's going to get Trump out of office. It's not going to be Democrats. And it's certainly not now, but there may be a point where it's too much.
Looking live at the airport in Buenos Aires, we're waiting to see President Trump as he gets off Air Force One, possibly to see if he makes any remarks. There's certainly a lot he could talk about. Clearly, Michael Cohen is off the president's Christmas list tonight, unless there's a special spot under the tree for, in the president's word, a weak person and not a very smart person. There is the president and the first lady. A bit of a break from what the president usually says about former senior advisors who've gotten caught in Robert Mueller's net. Ordinarily, he says he barely knew them or that they were only with me a very short time. He said that stuff about Michael Cohen in the past, but Cohen certainly doesn't fit either of those descriptions. And again, there you see the president arriving for G20. Paul, it's interesting. I mean, this G20, it's very different than, I think, what the White House initially, or what we have traditionally seen a president do at a meeting like
that. And they truncated the time that the president's going to be there anyway.
You said they truncated?
Okay. They slimmed it down, which is also a verb we think about with our president. I think that's a mistake, although I think this guy's different. He's having a presidential panic attack. You know, when the Starr investigation was going on, I was working for Bill Clinton. He found the work therapeutic. He would lose himself in the work. He could compartmentalize. And so he would, like, the best thing for Clinton, if he was upset about the Starr investigation, was like, sir, we're going to have a 2-day conference on children's health care. He would love that and dive into it. And I do worry, honestly, for our country, that this president is too distracted, he's too obsessed, and he's having a meltdown, and he can't seem to get his head off of that. It was wise to cancel the meeting with Putin because I don't think he's up for it.
Asha, just from a legal standpoint, and again, we're watching to see if the president does make any comments. It doesn't look like he's going to, but we'll see. He sometimes will just go toward reporters or answer yelled questions. From a legal standpoint, what today really stood out to you?
Well, it stood out to me that Mueller has a lot of information that he is able to corroborate exactly, for example, this timeline about the Trump Tower Moscow. That means I think he has information to corroborate a number of other things, and I think this puts other people in jeopardy. It also stood out to me, and we haven't discussed this today, that the acting Attorney General Whitaker wasn't able to stop this. And, you know, this was the big fear, and I was one of the Whitaker optimists that said, you know, I think this is too big and the wheels of justice are rolling and he won't be able to stop it. And I think that that's been, at least with this instance, it's been shown to be true. I worry that the president is going to become even more unhinged if he was banking on that being the brakes, and it's not happening.
Well, I want to hear, Paul, your thoughts about overall today, but one of the interesting things about the document that Mueller put out, he put a lot of details in this document that he didn't need to actually put in. And there's some belief that, you know, there's a concern is a report ever going to be made public? This is a way for Mueller, and correct me if I'm wrong, to put in details that might end up in a report that gets shelved or isn't seen by the public. It allows him to get information into the public sphere.
Right, and we're going to know. We are. I think through the speaking indictments, I think you real lawyers call them, and through other mechanisms, the Democrats will soon control the House of Representatives. They'll have subpoena power. And interestingly, most Americans, even defenders of Donald Trump, want the report made public. It is our report. We are paying for it. He is our president. He's our employee. And I think that covering it up would be a catastrophe. It'll be impossible. I just don't think they'll be able to.
Did you agree with what Jeff said? I mean, Jeff was saying today is the first day he actually thought the president might not complete his term, which
not there yet. But it's the defenses he has. That is, all he has to do is hold 34 senators, and he's president. And I do believe, and I know this from talking to Democratic leaders in the House, they will impeach Donald Trump when Republicans come to them and ask him to, and not before.
Exactly right.
You cannot make this partisan at the takeoff. It will be partisan at the landing. And so my strong view, and I'm not a Trump fan, is that constitutionally, neither party should ever undertake impeachment unless there's some sort of bipartisan
And
approach
I've
to it.
heard that from Nancy Pelosi.
I've
I've
talked-
heard that from Jerry Nadler,
talked
who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. There's another thing about today that I think is very important, is that it establishes a motive for something that was a mystery, which was, why was Donald Trump so solicitous of Vladimir Putin? Why throughout the campaign was he always saying such nice things about him? Someone that the Republican Party historically has not liked. Why did they change the platform to take a more pro-Russia position on Putin? And on Ukraine? The answer is, I think, is because there was money to be made with Russia. He was negotiating for a business deal with Putin's Russia. So the way you make money in Putin's Russia is to make nice with Putin. That's what was going on here, that this was about business. And I think that's a chilling thought, because this guy was running for president of the United States. No one knew he was negotiating while the campaign was going, the primary campaign, but the pieces fit together.
Well, we should point out, our reporting does not say that Michael Cohen, that Donald Trump knew about like the $50 million apartment idea per se. That was something, according to Felix Sater, a business partner, that was sort of a marketing idea, but it's not clear if Donald Trump knew about that.
That's right. But he certainly knew about the project, and the money to be made was on the project, not on giving Vladimir Putin the $50 million condo. What the money was, and you know, I went to Moscow. I reported this. He's been going to Moscow since the 80s, Donald Trump has, trying to build Trump Tower Moscow. This is an obsession of his. He went in the 80s. He went in the 90s. He did Miss Universe in 2013.
We should also point out, being friends with Vladimir Putin has been something of an obsession. I mean, he was, during the Miss Universe thing, he was tweeting, wow, I wonder if Putin's going to come. I wonder if he'll be my best friend.
Why? Because he wanted to make money there. That's why he, and it all comes, the pieces fit together that way.
To the point, and just let's remember that same summer, even though by this point the deal might not have been in progress anymore, when the FBI had a security briefing with the Trump campaign and the Clinton campaign to say, look, Russia is trying to get in and infiltrate and affect this election. Let us know if there's anything going on that might be relevant. They did not say a word.